There are places in the world where there is a certain kind of energy, a kind of strangeness, a kind of magic that just lives in the land. And there's a place in Lanarkshire, Scotland, that has a magical place just like that. Well, you're sure you have to go out over the moors and across the wet moorlands, and it's all dirty, but eventually you will come across a big pile of stone, a strange looking pile of stone, and that is Merlin's Crag, Merlin's Hill. And they say that there is magic there. Yes, magic. Now, it was about 200 years ago or so, there was a poor man who was a poor but honest man, and he worked as a handyman around the master's farm. He was an older man, they used to call him. Not a particular job, just whatever needed doing, he was the guy who would do it. And one day, the master of the house came to him and said, "Oh, sir, Colin was his name. Colin, it's time for you to go out and big me up some peat. It's the peat season time. I need you to go out and cut me some peat out there along that part of the, over there by the Merlin's Crag. Go over there and cut me some peat." So, peat. Now, I don't know if anybody here has grown up around Ireland or Scotland where there's peat bogs and moorlands. But peat is an amazing piece of earth. It's the same, unlike any other kind of earth, it burns. Yes. So what you would do is you would go out to the peat bogs and cut a large piece of peat and haul it back to your house, dry it out, and then you could use it to heat your house or let it smolder for cooking or even for drying barley to make whiskey. Yeah, it's an important thing, peat. Now, he didn't like doing that job, but he's a good owner man, and he did what his master said, and he got his wagon and his tools, shovel and whatnot, and he headed out, trudged across through the moors, headed towards the spot over by Merlin's Crag that he told him. And he pulled his wagon on through the moors, trudging here and there, and finally he found a beautiful spot of lush peat everywhere. There was beautiful azaleas sprung up around. He didn't notice the azaleas because he was ready to do one of the worst jobs ever, cutting and hauling peat. Oh, so he didn't want to look forward to this because you cutting peat, you have to dig your shovel in and pull up the peat, and then pull out, cut a whole piece out and haul it, throw it on your wagon, and it's heavy. See, peat is made of growth material that grows and decays and grows and decays and grows and decays until it's really dense and thick and very heavy. Well, he had done chopping, pulling up one hunk, hauling it up, throwing it into his wagon, cutting another big chunk, hauling it up, throwing it in his wagon, cutting it. Then suddenly he heard a little voice, "What do you think you're up to there?" He looked around, and suddenly there was a woman all dressed in green with red stockings and golden hair that came down to her hips, and she was only 2 feet tall. "What do you think you're doing? You're tearing up the roof of my house." "Oh, are you a fairy?" She goes, "That's right, I'm a fairy. My name's Maeve, and you are tearing a hole in my wall. How would you like it if I came over to your house and tore up the roof off of your house while you're home with your family eating your supper? Hey, you wouldn't like it at all." "Oh, no, I wouldn't like that, but I didn't know. I'm just cutting some peat for my master for his house." "His house? What about my house? You're tearing the roof right off." "So I'm very sorry. I didn't know. I didn't mean any offense." "Oh, you better put back every single piece of divot you pulled up right back where you found it, or you'll rue the day you ever came and cut the roof off of my house." Oh, so Colin, he'd heard stories about fairies. He knew the horrible catastrophes that could befall one if you run afoul of the fairy folk. So he thought, he grabbed the peat off of the wagon, threw it back down, he started tamping it down, another piece of peat, tamped it on down and tamped it on down, until finally it was just the way he found it, all perfect, and Maeve seemed satisfied. "Ah, very fine then, very fine. But you must leave now and never return here again. If I ever see you coming by my mounds, my house, tearing the roof off of my house, oh, there'll be a price to pay, a dear price to pay indeed, and we fairies have very long memories." So Maeve fluttered down to the ground and just kind of dissolved into the moss. Gone. Oh my God. His back was tingling with fear, and his sweat on his neck. He was, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. He ran back to the farm and told his master all about it. I was out there cutting peat, and then all of a sudden a fairy came out, and she told me I was ruining her house, and oh my gosh, the master said. Are you insane? Are you out of your head? What's wrong with you fairy folk? That's tearing off the roof of her house. Drinking is more like it. You must have been drinking the whiskey. That's what I think has been going on. No, sir, I promise that. But the master did not believe anything he said. He was a modern man. He didn't believe in ghosts or fairies or water monsters or any of those things. He only believed what he could see. He said, no, my lad, there's no ghosts up there, no magic up there. There's nothing up there but peat waiting to be cut. And you better get yourself out there tomorrow and bring me that peat and store it up here at the farm where we can dry it for the winter, or you will not have your week's pay. Well, Colin couldn't have that. No, he's got a wife and a gaggle of bairn back at home to take care of and feed. He can't do that. So the next day he did what his master said. He was very reluctant. He wasn't happy about this at all, but he had to do what he had to do. So he took his wagon back out there to that patch of land by Merlin's Craig, and he started digging. Nothing. He cut out a piece, picked it up, hauled it into the wagon. Nothing. Cut up another piece, threw it in the wagon, nothing. Well, as a matter of fact, he went on through the whole season cutting that peat and going about his other chores without ever seeing a single fairy. It was very strange. He began to think, perhaps my master was right. Maybe I was just having some kind of a strange dream of fairies. They couldn't possibly be real. Not at all. Well, it came about the year passed, and it turned out to be the same day as the year before when he came and chopped the roof off of those poor fairies' house. And he'd almost forgotten all about it. He'd been doing good work at the farmer's farm that week, and his farmer was very pleased with all of his work, and he gave him a nice milk jug to take home to his wife and children. So he was very happy. He'd been doing a good work all week. He was feeling fine. He had some milk for his family. His beautiful evening, he thought he'd head on home, take the nice path over there by Merlin's Craig, and head back on home. He was happy, singing and humming a tune. It was a great day. Well, he came upon that spot once again near Merlin's Craig. And Merlin kind of started to feel a little tired. Oh, his eyes were drooping and his feet were like lead. Oh, I think I'll just lie down here for a few minutes and take a rest. And he laid down by the stone, and soon he fell into a deep, deep, deep sleep. He woke suddenly. It was about midnight, he could tell, and he heard some voices. He heard singing, and he looked around him, and there was a circle of fairies dancing. All around him there was boy fairies and girl fairies and other fairies, and all the fairies were there. And they were dancing and singing, he's come to take a roof, he's come to break a roof, he's come to take a roof, he's come to break a roof. Oh, no, this is not right. He tried to get up, but his legs feel like they were stuck to the ground, and then he turned this way, and he couldn't get past the elves because they were dancing this way. And he turned that way, and there was elves every which way he tried to turn. Maeve, that little fairy, flew up right at his face, looked him eye to beady little eye, and said, "Come with me, lass. Dance, lad, dance, turn a turn with me." Well, now, Colin had never known much about dancing, and, fairies were very frightening, so he turned to run, and he was trying to run. He looked down, and he noticed his feet weren't even touching the ground. He was trying to run, and then all of a sudden, the world started spinning around him, and his head was getting light, and suddenly everything seemed to get larger and larger, and then he looked at Maeve and realized he was looking her straight in the eye. He was only 2 feet tall, just like the fairy. "What have you done to me?" "I told you there would be a price to pay," she said. And she grabbed his hands. He tried to get away from her, but she held close. And now, as I said, though he'd never danced before in his life, he started to dance. He danced wildly, he waltzed, he jigged, he turned, he was spinning around with all the fairies. Well, that merriment went on all night long. There was dancing and spinning and singing, and soon Colin forgot. Well, he started to forget. His family and his bear, They didn't seem to be so important in his memory after a while. They just danced and danced all night long, spinning like they were mad. Then they heard, oh, the merriment ceased immediately, while all the fairies gathered together, and they booked at breakneck speed toward the wall of the mountain there. And they ran and they ran and they dragged Colin along with them, bumping along, and suddenly, right from the side of the mountain, a door opened. And all of the fairies dragging Colin along, they clattered in to the door, and it whoom, slammed behind them. Well, Colin got in. There was like a mist, like a magic mist that he passed through, and then as he opened his eyes, he could see a giant feasting hall. Well, okay, so it was 10 feet high, but for 2 feet people, it's a giant feasting hall. And all through the feasting hall, there was workbenches and tables and chairs and couches to rest on, and a table laden with food, and people were getting down to doing the fairy business. Colin just sat down. He didn't know what else to do. He was trapped here in this fairy realm. He just sat there and watched as the fairies went about their fairy business. Why, there was some fairies who were taking magic quills and dipping it in magic ink so they could write fairy spells or fairy laws on beautiful pieces of parchment. Or some fairies were making fairy honey from beautiful flowers, and why, some fairies were even making fairy whiskey. That's right. And he watched them all night long, working and working, and well, all day long, working, doing all their, they were doing some things that he'd never even seen before, some kind of strange and bizarre tasks he couldn't even explain. Well, the day went on, and finally as evening came, Maeve came back to Colin. Ah, Colin, it's been a while, and as you'll see, the roof has grown back again. All the divots you replaced are all filled, and all the grass is covered, and all has been restored to its original. And now that it has been restored, you're free to go home. Well, he looked up and he goes, yeah, when he walked in, there was big gashes in the roof, but no, they had all been filled in, and it was like a lush tapestry of foam. Oh, it was beautiful, it was beautiful. She said, oh, you can go home now, but there is one thing. You must never, ever, ever tell anyone anything you have learned while you spent your time here in the fairy kingdom. Tell no mortal soul ever, or there will be a price to pay you cannot afford. I said, okay, I promise. I won't be telling a living soul about what I saw here. I'll just be happy to go back home. She said, well, you're free to go. The door opened in front of him, and he went to take a step through. The next thing he woke up, he was on the ground, sleeping on the moss. What the? He looked around, he was looking for fairies, no fairies. He went over to the wall, there was no door in the stone. That must have been some strange dream, he thought to himself. Well, he picked up that milk jug and he headed on back home, taking the long, beautiful path, still happy and humming because he had this beautiful milk to bring home, and he was just so happy to get out of that fairy kingdom, if it really existed. As he came close to his home, he could see some kids running around he didn't recognize. And he walked closer and he saw his wife. His wife looked at him. She turned pale as though she had seen a ghost. She looked terrified and scared, and then all of a sudden that look turned into anger and rage. And she looked like she'd grown older too, aged and raged. Not a good thing. That's not a good thing, aged and raged, no. Where have you been all of this time? How could you go for 7 years and leave your wife and bairns to take care of themselves? And he realized, that day he had spent down in the fairy kingdom, it was only a day for him, but it was 7 years for everyone else. And he had promised the fairy folk that he would never tell a living soul or pay a price he could not pay. So couldn't even tell his wife anything. It took years and years for her to forgive him. And they never ever went back to cut peat over there by Merlin's Crag again. And it just reminds us to be careful, be mindful of the change between the real world and the world of magic, nature and magic. Where is it that one separates and another begins? Or maybe they don't. Maybe it's all just one thing. And that's the story of the Fairies of Merlin's Crag.